Mikkel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone who is joining us this afternoon to hear the presentation, as well as to those of you who will be providing testimony, whether verbal or written. This is a public hearing of the New York City Water Board on wholesale water rates to take effect July 1st, 2022. We are holding this meeting pursuant to state executive order permitting virtual public meetings.
Mikkel, we've lost you. If you can
Place
hear
their phone
me,
on mute in order to limit the background noise.
thank you.
I have placed several documents in the official record, including a notice appointing me as the hearing officer, verified copies of the public notices placed in the newspapers, a draft of the rate schedule listing the rates and billable policies for the coming year, a public information booklet describing the proposed rates, and copies of the written testimony received by the board so far. The draft rate schedule and the public information booklet are also available on the board's website, as is a copy of the presentation you will be hearing today. As noted, this meeting is being recorded, and once prepared, an audio recording and transcript of the meeting will be made available on the board's website at nyc.gov/nycwaterboard. Again, that's nyc.gov/nycwaterboard. For members of the public who may have difficulty hearing, there is a real-time text captioning feature available to follow up with the meeting. You can link to the captioning service from the public hearing notice under the Meetings tab of the board's website. The program for today includes two sections. First, the Department of Environmental Protection will make a presentation explaining proposed water rates for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2022, as well as billing policy modifications. Once again, we're going to ask that everyone place their phone on mute. Second, members of the public will have an opportunity to make a statement. I have a list of pre-registered speakers, and when we get to that section of the hearing, I'm going to start by calling the pre-registered speakers by name. When you hear your name, please unmute your phone, and you will have up to 5 minutes to speak. After I have called all of the pre-registered speakers, I'm going to ask if anyone else would like to speak, and I will try to mediate between people speaking at the same time as fairly as I can. As mentioned, we do have members of the Water Board with us today, including Chairman Alfonso Carney, Jonathan Golden, and Dan Ziroli. Thank you all for being here. We are also joined by DEP's Commissioner, Rohit Agarwal, DEP's Chief Financial Officer, Joseph Miran, and the Water Board's Treasurer, Omar Nazem, as well as staff members from the Department of Environmental Protection. Before we get started, Chairman Carney, would you like to make any opening remarks?
I was on mute, forgive me. Thank you very much, Mikkel. Several comments. The first is to thank the members who are present for being here. It's wonderful to have board representation for this particular hearing and one we're going to have near the end of the week. Thank you very much for being here. The board members, for the avoidance of doubt and for clarity and for the record, the board has had an opportunity as a board to see this presentation. We have not spoken of it. There have been no meetings in which the presentation has been discussed. The reason for that is that it is absolutely essential that this board and its members maintain open minds about where we're headed. And that can only happen with public comment. And that's why this meeting is open to the public, so that we can hear what the public has to say. That's an essential part of the decision-making process, and we're very, very grateful to have people who are on this call. The medium may not be perfect, but the end product will work. The testimony is testimony we want to hear, and we will hear gratefully. and we're here in order to have our own discussions about the proposal. Are there other board members on the call who want to offer comments? Hearing none. Mikkel, please run with it.
Thank you, Chair. Now you're going to hear a presentation from Commissioner Agarwal and Chief Financial Officer Joe Mirren. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mikkel, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks to Chairman Carney and the other board members, and everybody from the public who's joined us this afternoon. We have a presentation. It is available to you all, and so we will walk through it. The starting point, of course, and the most important reason for this meeting is that DEP is requesting that the Water Board undertake a 4.9% rate increase on the water rate. We'll walk through in this presentation the overall state of the agency and the rationale for why that rate we think is necessary, how we think it is neither too high nor too low, and what it includes in terms of funds to help cushion the impact of rate hikes on lower income New Yorkers. First of all, I'll say, over the last year or 2 years of the pandemic, DEP has done a tremendous job of maintaining operations and keeping the state of our infrastructure and our service at a high quality. At no point did the pandemic materially affect either the water supply system or the sewer system. And of course, we had no service disruptions related to the pandemic. There have been some ongoing effects on the system operations of the pandemic, including a reduced headcount caused by the difficulty in hiring during the pandemic. Our current headcount is measurably below the personnel levels. You should know that along with other city agencies, DEP returned to a traditional 5-day per week in the office work format in September of 2021, although a number of the digital and productivity innovations that we introduced during the pandemic are remaining as part of DEP's workflow. Among our priority areas for this year and next are recruiting, hiring, and training, with a goal of getting us back towards budgeted staffing levels. There have been a number of projects that we've made significant progress on over the last year. Perhaps the most significant is that in September of 21, right during the midst of the pandemic, our Bureau of Customer Service launched a new billing system, the UMAX Microsoft Dynamics billing system that serves as the core water billing tool for the agency. This was the largest financial software upgrade undertaken by the agency in 25 years and was a significant internal effort. It will yield major dividends to the public through better, fully accurate, easier to read bills, and give us the ability to understand our consumer behavior much better with a goal of serving the public better. We are making progress on major capital projects. Perhaps the most important is the Delaware Aqueduct bypass tunnel. This is the largest repair project in the history of the city, and we are currently working to coordinate the last stage of this project and its timetable with the affected municipalities outside the city and our regulatory oversight entities, particularly DEC, to ensure as our top priority a completely uninterrupted supply of safe and clean drinking water to all New York City residents and our upstate customers. A number of other projects worth noting. We've completed work on $148 million worth of new sewer construction in Canarsie and East New York. We've done a nearly $16 million package of improvements to the Jerome Park Reservoir. We've commenced work on $29 million worth of upgrades at 19 NYCHA properties, focused on green infrastructure with a view towards mitigating stormwater. We've completed an $18.4 million project in partnership with the New York City Department of Transportation at Montefiore Square in Harlem. We've commenced work on a nearly $7 million drainage upgrade in Westerly on Staten Island, including both storm sewers and catch basins and water main and hydrant upgrades. And we've continued significant work in Southeast Queens, including a number of projects completed in Hollis and Queens Village. And now let me turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer to run through the financial update.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Joseph Barron. I'm the CFO of the Department of Environmental Protection, as well as the Executive Director for the Water Board. I will start with slide 6, which is DEP's capital construction program, and it remains robust and well-funded. What we have here is a chart showing the comparison between the capital plan, 10-year plan from April 2019, which was the fiscal years 19 through 28, compared to the most recent capital plan for fiscal years 22 through 31, showing it went from $20.7 billion up to $25.1 billion, an increase of 21.4%, which most significantly was changes in the water distribution and sewers, which is going to show our continued investment in sewer improvements and water transmission improvements, with also increases in the other areas such as water pollution control, increasing by 5% from there. Going to the next slide, we are also then looking at other factors that are going into how we came up with the 4.9% rate. And we wanted to go through interest rates are rising, which will increase systems borrowing costs. Market interest rates began to trend upward during the fourth quarter of calendar year 2021 and have continued to rise through May 2022. The increase in U.S. Treasury rates have been accompanied by an increase in municipal bond rates. Despite recent increases in interest rates, the system can borrow at rates comparable to long-term average borrowing rates. Together with higher rates of price inflation, higher borrowing costs are likely to increase the system's cost. Credit ratings on water bonds remain high based on the board's authority and willingness to raise rates that meet the system's funding requirements. And what we see here, to those following along on the charts in the presentation on the website, is showing the increase in the interest rates from 17 up through April of 22, and comparable rates as changed from March of 22 from a year previously. And while these rates have been going up, they're still manageable, but we are keeping a very tight eye on this and our partners with the Municipal Water Finance Authority to ensure that we have the adequate revenue to make sure that we're going to meet our bonding requirements. Next, on slide 8, DEP and the board maintained billing and collection activities in fiscal year 2022 while facing challenges from customers' delinquencies and lower water consumption. Billing and collection activities by DEP and the board faced the headwinds of customer payments deferral and lower water rate consumption during fiscal year 2022. Through May 23rd of 2022, revenues were $3.35 billion, which was an increase of 4.3% compared to the same time in fiscal year 2021, above the 2.76% rate increase that was implemented for fiscal year 2022. So that was heartening that we're at least a little bit ahead of schedule and ahead of projections for the past fiscal year. Financial headwinds faced by DEP and the board include A, the balance of overdue customer bills, which is higher than before the pandemic; B, water consumption levels below the quantity of water used prior to the pandemic; and C, limitations on the availability of collection tools, including reauthorization of the ability to sell liens secured by overdue water bills. We're continuing to monitor all three of these elements to see how we can, deal with them, and they are factored into the rate that we're considering now. During the pandemic, residential and commercial customers faced with loss of income deferred paying their water bills and sewer bills. As recovery progresses, we are seeing signs of customers who fell behind on the water and sewer bills starting to make payments to restore balances to good standing. So again, this is a very concerning area in terms of our delinquency rates and the impact on revenues, but we have been seeing some uptick in the last few months of people, those rate payers paying, more timely. I'm going to move now to slide 9. Water consumption by metered accounts remains below the pre-pandemic level, with recent consumption data showing an upward trend. And we have here a graph showing the metered bill percent change in demand from July 2018 through March of 2022 versus the baseline. And you have a combination of both the residential and non-residential here, with a much steeper fall in the non-residential, which, reflects the decrease in commercial activity, particularly of those people that were going into office settings in Manhattan, and a slight uptick, of the residential consumption, which would reflect more people staying home with the work-at-home environment that we were through most of the pandemic. And just to be, to make it clear that, the residential consumption is about 80% of our base of water consumption. So that's where it's offset for the most part, the decline, but not totally, that we've seen in the commercial, water usage. Next, we're going to go on to slide 11, talking about the proposed rate and billing policies for fiscal year 2023. So as the Commissioner opened with, we are proposing a 4.9% rate increase for customers in New York City. We also have $30 million to propose customer affordability programs funds which preserves the 50% increase authorized in fiscal year 2022 into a second program year. No budgeted rental payment to the city for fiscal year 2023 is being requested at this time. Note so that the rate increase will ensure revenue sufficient to fund the system's robust capital construction program, support high rating from bond rating agencies, help mitigate the system from the risk of rising interest rates and inflation, and support hiring retention initiatives to return headcount to budgeted levels, and support expanded analytical capabilities, including analysis of customer data enabled by the new billing system. I'm going to move to slide 12. Residential customers with normal levels of water use will see a small increase in their monthly bills. What we have here is the chart showing the comparison of the rate as it was in effect last year for the average single-family home, which was $994 on an annual basis. With the proposed rate increase, that will go to, for fiscal year 2023, up to $1,041, which roughly approximates a slightly less than $4 increase on a monthly basis. For the average multifamily meter charge, the increase, which is apartment dwellers, the increase is going from $738 to $773 on an annual basis, an increase of approximately less than $3. Multifamily conservation program per residential unit will go from $1,081 to $1,134, an increase of slightly over $4 a month. And the minimum charge, we're pleased to say, will remain the same, again, at a rate of $464 a year. So no increase for those people that qualify, mainly seniors, for the minimum charge on properties. Moving on to slide 13. As I stated earlier, DEP continues to recommend to the board a continuation of $30 million of affordability programs, which would extend it for a second year. This is comprised of, what we increased from last year into this year, multifamily water assistance program at $12 million a year, the homeowner water assistance program at $14 million a year, the leak forgiveness program, which equates to approximately $4 million a year, thus for a total affordability programs of $30 million a year. On the next slide, slide 14, we detail a historical trends on residential use charges, which will remain lower than in other large cities. So going back to 2016 up through 2023, well, we don't have the 2023 rate numbers yet, but through 2022, New York City's water rates has remained below the 30 large city average at a rate of less than 21% below other cities. So we continue to keep the rate of, while it's increasing, it's still less than most other large cities and at an affordable rate. Moving on to slide 15, here we have the financial outlook for the water board budget. And this slide is a summarization of the cash flow statement that is also on the board's website, which is much more detailed, but it collapses down into the major area of expenditures. So starting from the top, we have the Dep Operations and Maintenance, which is those costs that are necessary to support the personnel and the operations of the system, such as parts, equipment, chemicals, fuel, leases, all the other operation costs of delivering water and treating sewage and, the conveyance and distribution every day. So this is going from $1,657 million to $1,824 million. I'll go on the next slide into a little more details of what was driving those factors up. Then we have debt service costs and water and sewer debt. which is $1.487 billion, forecasted for fiscal year 22, and is at $1.643 billion for fiscal year 23. I will point out that this is, consistent with the past years in that we had lower costs than originally targeted on the debt service portion due to continued lower interest rates than were, budgeted. We still are conservatively modeling, what interest rates may be for fiscal year 23, but that may be coming closer than we have in years past. So we have to be careful, very watching that closely, since it may not afford us the opportunity to have as much savings as we previously had in interest rates. That is supporting the $25 billion in the capital program that was on the previous slide at the beginning of the financial presentation. The other portion of debt service is funds for, cash financed capital program, as well as what's called, defeasance, which is where we go, the Municipal Water Finance Authority will go into the market, buy older, higher interest rate debt, and issue it at a lower interest rate. Again, that's something that we're watching carefully because we still have opportunities such as that, but as interest rates go up, they do become less, less available, and that's where we would move more to using cash financed, debt service. And this is going from $469 million because there is the expectation that we will be doing defeasance for this fiscal year 2022, and that down to $263 million in fiscal year 2023. Next, we have Water Board and Water Authority combined expenses, which is relatively flat at $100 million, for both. And then there's just a credit that we had gotten for underspending in fiscal year 2022, which helps us, keep the rates, helps moderate the rate increase. And as noted already, the rental payment is expected to be zero for this upcoming fiscal year. All those inputs come to the total of $3.67 billion for fiscal year 22 and $3.836 billion for fiscal year 2023, which the rate increase is bringing us to. That is slightly less than 4.4% because we also do factor in other adjustments and the fact that we do expect that there are continued conservation measures that go on, as people replace older fixtures with new fixtures. So water consumption has been, continuing to go down, even, separate from, the decreases we saw due to the pandemic-induced, consumption. Going to the next slide, 16, we have DEP's O&M budget invest in core utility activities and customer services while reserving against price inflation. This was a concern that, the board expressed in the meeting when we presented the rate as to what we were doing, to address the risk that we have out there to the system for inflation, and is the 4.9% going to be adequate to be able to help with that? And, fiscal year 2023's OMB budget includes additional funds for inflation and cost contingencies. Specifically, we have $42 million in anticipated needs related to higher costs related to energy and chemical purchases. We also have expected, not yet identified, contingency of $49 million for inflation. One thing that we are anticipating, or, we expect at some point that there may be labor rate increases, there could be increases to fringe benefits, there could be changes to other costs that we haven't anticipated. So we think this is prudent to have, this $9 million to, guard against any such, inflationary increases out there. This comes to, when you look at this across the totality of the O&M cost, it's just about a 6% factor related to inflation. And as people know, we've been seeing inflation over the past few months that has been maybe a little higher than a rate. So we think this is perhaps a, conservative and, prudent number, but we are going to monitor it, closely, and we think that it should be adequate. Next, we also have, there were additional funds covered for needs that the agency, has, put forth, which is climate resiliency programs, including green infrastructure for $20 million, equipment upgrades, replacements, and maintenance of $17 million, and funds for additional regulatory and compliance initiatives such as the filtration avoidance determination that allows us to continue to not have to build a filtration plant for the west of Hudson operations of $9 million. We're initiating design build programs and regulatory compliance work, including environmental health and safety initiatives. That's $8 million. And compliance initiatives under the revised federal water quality standards, also known as the lead and copper rules, which we anticipate is going to cost an additional $7 million in the upcoming year. And then the balance of the increase from the $1.487 billion to $1.8643 billion on the O&M side was various, other adjustments, pluses and minuses. Moving on to slide 17, I'm going to turn over to the board treasurer, Omar Nazem, so he'll address these next few slides.
All right. Thank you, Joe. So we have, there are three revisions that are proposed to the board's rate schedule. The rate schedule is available on the board's website. There you can find this year's version, the FY22 version. You can find an archive of historical versions, and you can see a draft version of the schedules proposed for FY23 with the changes tracked to draw your attention to the sections that will change. Most of the markup is just taking the various unit prices or volumetric prices and increasing them by the 4.9%. There are three other changes we wanted to draw your attention to, and you can see the precise wording in the booklet, but I'll go through in summary form what the three are. The first is we have a billing program called the Cap on Metered Charges. And this is available to residential properties that experience high water consumption and that agree to undertake a leak or waste inspection to verify whatever it was that caused the leak has been removed or mitigated. The wording change to the rule makes clear that the leak or waste inspection needs to occur contemporaneously with the billing period in which the meter bill cap is being sought, or at least very promptly adjacent to it. The issue it's trying to solve is where there's high usage, the usage is addressed, but then an inspection doesn't occur until a year later or 2 years later. The inspection's got to be during the billing period in question, or like right next to it, for prompt and kind of responsive, kind of action in response to the leak. The ideal situation would be where a customer is monitoring their water use, they're enrolled in the leak notification, the email program we have. They see the use, or they get the email alert, they contact the DEP, corrective steps are taken, the leak is addressed, then they write in for the bill cap. They reached out, they took action, they've got the contemporaneous inspection, and they get the bill cap, protect themselves from the loss of income they would experience if they had to pay full freight on the bill. So that's what it clarifies. You got to do the inspection near or in the billing period where the request is being sought. That's number one. Number two, this will be an arcane policy except to a small number of customers, but we have a billing program called the Multifamily Conservation Program. And the program is available to multifamilies that install water efficiency fixtures in a certain number of their units. They have to install a meter as well, but if they make the efficiency improvements and if they install the meter, then they have, if they choose, a billing program available to them that is not billed on a metered basis. It's about $1,100 per unit per year. And in the multifamily world, especially in the affordability world, a lot of customers like that. They like that budget predictability, and they like the fact that it's a form of insurance against if there is excess consumption some year because of something that happens in the building or a change in tenant composition. They know what their water number is going to be no matter what happens up or down. We have a small collection of customers who were enrolled in that program several years ago as we were trying to phase out the old legacy frontage rates. And they went into the program on the understanding that the paperwork, the administrative compliance would be accomplished. If that didn't happen, there's a surcharge they're exposed to. We are going to be waiving the surcharge for fiscal year 23 under the proposed rate schedule for revisitation next year. We didn't think it's the right time to saddle what is ultimately an affordable collection of properties when we're still coming out of the circumstances around the pandemic. So it extends for another year under the proposal, the waiver of the 10% surcharge on the automatically enrolled MCP properties. The last one is a wording clarification that I think most customers understand. Is that the old legacy frontage rates are not available on properties that are newly constructed that undergo a substantial renovation. The exact wording of substantial renovation is addressed in the rate schedule, but if you weren't on frontage prior to 2012, you certainly can't get into it now. And those are old rate plans. And aside from the MCP rate, we are trying to phase out and roll out. And the wording change just makes clear that's the case. We've had a few instances where people tried to enroll sort of new properties that were substantially rebuilt or even newly constructed, and we just want to have very clear in the rate schedule you can't do that. This is an old rate plan we're trying to phase out. That's slide 17. On slide 18, this is actually not quite a rate setting or rate proposal topic, but it may be the number one topic of interest to the people who come to water board meetings routinely. It does touch on rate setting topics, so we have an update on it. DEP has been working on for more than a year now a comprehensive rate study. It's looking at a lot of topics. It's looking at fixed fees. It's looking at stormwater. It's looking at tiered rates. It's looking at a lot of different things. So we have an update on where the project is and the timeline we think will be in place through the completion of the project. So the working group has completed a comparative rate structure analysis and held several public stakeholder meetings. DEP continues to work with a consultant to complete the remaining portions of the study. It's probably about halfway done now. The upcoming phases include the revenue requirements and the rate options assessment phases of the project. Once those phases are complete, the team is going to then turn to looking at the options for implementing different rate ideas, as well as looking at how those rate scenarios would impact different categories of customers in light of a change in rate structure or the level of rates overall. The project will finish with the team issuing a final report and a set of recommendations to DEP, and DEP will share those recommendations along with the consultants to the board for potential consideration and inclusion in a future year's rate schedule. The team estimates that the rest of the work will be wrapped up by the first quarter of calendar 2023, and that the final report and recommendations will be made available to the board and the public before the end of calendar year 2023. Then slide 19 is just it lays out the remaining events in this season's rate setting. With these digital meetings, we're not doing the full cycle of in-borough hearings because everyone in every borough can call into everything if they want to. So we have one more public hearing, which is tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. That's another conference call digital format meeting. And then the board will be meeting on June 1st, Wednesday next week, to consider the testimony, consider DEP's proposal, and take a vote on the budget and rates for the fiscal year starting July 1st. So that is everything from me, Mikkel.
Thank you, Omar. At this time, I'm going to begin the public testimony portion of the hearing. I'm going to go through my list of pre-registered speakers, each of whom will have up to 5 minutes to speak. After we've gone through the pre-registered list, I will see if anyone else would like to speak, and I will try to be as fair as I can while mediating between folks who speak up at the same time. So first, we have Catherine Damiani-Bresler from the Office of Queensborough President Donovan Richards. Kat? Okay, so it seems like Kat may have only submitted written testimony on behalf of the borough president. So at this time, I would like to open it up to see if there's anyone else on the call who would like to speak. You can unmute yourself and say your name. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to conclude today's hearing. As a reminder, the board will return for another hearing tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. And after that, we'll reconvene on Wednesday, June 1st at 1 p.m. to consider and vote on proposed rates and the budget for next year. We thank you all for participating today, and we will either see you tomorrow night or at the board meeting next week.
Mikkel, it's Alfonso. Let me ask whether any of the board members who have joined the call have questions for either the commissioner or for the chief financial officer and executive director, Joe Murin, or for Omar Nazem.
Alfonso, this is Dan Zarilla. No, one quick thing. I'm just curious if we should have a conversation at some point about either the advertising for these meetings or the format of these meetings. This is 2 in a row without any public comments. So that's just something on my mind that we should probably bring up at a next board meeting.
Happy to do that, Dan, and you and I should talk about it before that board meeting, if you agree.
Yeah, wonderful. Let's do that.
Okay, terrific. Then let me thank the leadership for an excellent presentation today. As I said earlier, public comment and public commentary is essential to this decision-making process. We need to know what folk out there who are the ratepayers are thinking about this proposal. We will hope that the participation tomorrow night will be better and keep our fingers crossed. Mikkel, I'm finished. You want to close the meeting?
Thank you, Chair. With that, we will close today's public hearing. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you all very much.